ויש דירות תיל וצריפים, צריפים, צריפים, ומאות אלפי אנשים מוזרים כאלה, עם בגדי פסים, בלי שערות, עושים לנו כל מיני תנועות, ואנחנו לא מבינים, לא שומעים מה שהם אומרים, אבל צועקים, אומרים לנו משהו. אמרת, אוי מסכנים, הנה, משוגעים, שמו אותם פה, את המשוגעים האלה. תראי איך הם מתנהגים, תראי איך הם נראים, מי יודע מה קרה. ואחרי שעתיים אנחנו מגיעים לאולם גדול, הנגר כזה ענקי, ספסלים, אומרים, תשמעו, אתם נסעתם המון ימים, אתם עייפים, מלוכלכים, תתפשטו, תקפלו יפה את הבגדים, כל אחד ישים על ספסל שיזכור איפה הוא השאיר את הבגדים שלו, ורק תחזיקו את הנעליים בידיים, ואנחנו נכנסים למקלחת. אנחנו באמת נכנסנו למקלחת, אבל היה צפוף ולא, המים האלה אפילו לא הספיקו להתרטב. ואז פותחים דלת, אנחנו לא חוזרים באולם איפה שהתפשטנו, אנחנו יוצאים בדלת אחרת. באולם השני אנחנו עוד עדיין ערומות, יושבים ספרים עם מכונת, ובנות שורות שורות שורות, עשרות ספרים, מספרים את הנשים. כמובן שערות מכל הצבעים, מכל האורך, ערימות של שערות על הרצפה, ופתאום אנשים לא מכירים אחד את השני. אנחנו קודם כל בהלם, אנחנו גם לא חושבים איך הגענו פה, מה קרה, אנחנו לא יכולים לשחזר את כל מה שקרה לנו מהבוקר עד עכשיו. נכנסת אחת השומרות, ואנחנו שואלים, תגידי, זה נכון שבסוף שבוע אנחנו נפגוש את ההורים, את המשפחה? היא אומרת, מי אמר לכם את זה? הורים, משפחה, אתם רואים את הערובות, אתה רואה את העשן, הם כבר בשמיים. מה את מדברת שטויות? את משוגעת? מה, אתם לא מריחים את הריח של בשר חרוך? שורפים את האנשים. אני לא משוגעת, תבינו לאן הגעתם.
So that was an experience of one Holocaust survivor talking about her entrance into a concentration camp. Today we're going to be talking about concentration camps and about the experiences that people had in the concentration camps. So the first concentration camp was Dachau, which was opened in March of 1933. And the first trains carrying Jews arrived at Auschwitz in March of 1942. Today we are going to focus our understanding of concentration camps on Auschwitz, since it is the largest and the most well-known of all of the camps. So all of our pictures, any of the videos, any of the testimonials are going to be about life in Auschwitz. Auschwitz was so large, in fact, that they had a train system set up so that the trains would leave other areas of Europe and land directly in Auschwitz. Often several trains arrived daily carrying Jews from almost every country in Europe. You can see they came from the Netherlands, from Belgium, from France, from Italy, all the way down into Greece. This was an entire European phenomenon. Each of the trains carried thousands of people. They were packed into cattle wagons with no room to sit, no food, a bucket for water, and another as a toilet. The journeys could last days on end, with the passengers not knowing where they were going, or for that matter, how long they would be on the trains. Many people died during the journey as a result of illness or hunger. Take a moment to notice there are people just like spilling out of that train car. The train cars were not built for humans. They were not passenger trains like, say, tracks or front runner. These would be just simply cattle cars. That means that they are just open boxes that they would normally put cows in, but in this case it was just an open box. You can also see the various groups of people. You can see the older people, you can see the younger people, you see both men and women. This was not discriminated on any of those. This was based off of what we learned about yesterday, the groups targeted. Selection. Once you got into the camp, there was a selection process. Usually those deemed fit to work by the SS. The SS was the German army that ran the camps. The SS stands for something very long in German that I truly do not know how to pronounce. But they ran the camps. They were the prison guards. So once you got deemed by an SS guard, you were either sent to one side of the unloading ramp to get your head shaved, get tattoos on your arms, and receive work assignment and uniforms. The elderly, women with children, and unfit were typically sent the other direction. So you can see many of the men being sent to the left in this picture. The elderly, women with children, and unfit would be sent to the right, directly to the line of prisoners who were condemned to death in the gas chambers. The gas chambers is not something we're going to spend too much time talking about, but basically it was a room that looked like a shower, and instead of water coming out of the nozzles, it would be a poisonous gas. So they would often be, like we saw with the woman at the beginning in the video, where she was sent to that mass shower, kind of like you'd see in a public pool or in the gym locker room. But instead, she was lucky to actually have water come out. Not everyone did. Sometimes the gas would pour out. They would wait for all the people inside to die, and then they would send them to the crematoria, which is where you get cremated. The bodies would be burnt, and that was the smoke that was being referred to in the video as well. Once you were in the camp, if you were there to work, we're going to talk about the conditions for those who worked. The food conditions were obviously going to be terrible. They were there to work, so they were given food. This was not complete and total starvation. However, their morning meal would be made up of fake coffee or herbal tea. Notice both of those, meal and tea, are in quotation marks because that is a loose interpretation of those words. And for lunch, prisoners would be given watery soup. So it'd mainly be water, but if they were lucky enough, they might find a piece of turnip or a potato peel in their food. This is a quote from a woman named Kitty in a book called Return to Auschwitz. So she was interviewed, and this was what she talked about with food. The dead body had a piece of bread. I'm taking this piece of bread from this dead body, and I'm taking this one pair of boots, and I can sell it. With this, I can buy myself a place to live. I can buy myself a place to sleep. With this bread, I bought myself a bit of access to wash. Your bowl was your life. Without your bowl, you didn't eat. What this illustrates is that the prisoners inside the camp would do whatever it took to survive, even if it was something they would never have done at any other point in their life. For example, taking food and shoes from a dead body was not something that people were proud to do, but they did it because they needed somewhere to sleep. And if they could bribe somebody else into a place on a bed and say, hey, if you give me a place to sleep, can I take where you are sleeping? Or I'm sorry, if I give you a piece of bread, will you give me a place to sleep? And they were able to almost have a barter system within the camps. Again, they're not proud of what they did. Many, many, many accounts show us this. Cleanliness. So obviously cleanliness is not going to be at the top priority for anyone. It was impossible for inmates to keep clean. For the first 2 years of the camp's existence, remember this is Auschwitz, the prisoners had no access to water for washing. When there was water, it was not clean. Prisoners spent their existence in the camp in dirty clothes, which increased the chance of them getting infections and diseases. That would be like if you get a scrape on your hand and then you go play in a sandbox. There's a very good chance you're going to get an infection. Nowadays, we have things like Neosporin to help us out. But at this point, in history and with the conditions they were in. If you got a cut and if that cut got infected, that was essentially a death sentence for you. So there was death not just from the cruelty of the soldiers, but also from infections and diseases due to a lack of cleanliness and hygiene. This, for example, is one of the the barracks for toilets. So take it for what it is. Those holes in the ground are exactly what they look like. I know when I use the restroom, I like privacy. And I'm also noticing there isn't really a space for things like toilet paper. So this was a way to show that, yes, we're treating you kind of like humans, but this is not humane treatment. This is how you would treat an animal. And many of the prisoners described their experience in the concentration camps as being treated more like an animal than a human. So this is further proof of that. Again, here is a quote from someone. His name was Primo Levi, in this same book, Survival in Auschwitz. We are slaves. We are slaves, deprived of every right, exposed to every insult, condemned to certain death. But we must certainly wash our faces without soap in dirty water and dry ourselves on our jackets for dignity. We must walk erect without dragging our feet to remain alive, not to begin to die. So what this tells us is although the people in the camps were not being treated as humans, and they were not being given the resources to act like humans, they had to go through the motions. They had to go through the motion of washing their face, even if the water was dirty and the jackets were dirty. They did that because it was a sign of dignity. It was treating themselves like humans. And if they ever stopped treating themselves like human, if they ever stopped walking upright, it was that instant that they began to die. It's that will to live and that human treatment that kept them moving and kept them going. So let's talk about some of the work that they did. Again, once you were in a labor camp, there were jobs to do. One of the more prestigious jobs and one of the higher level jobs where you would get treated better would be if you were a member of the Sonderkommando. This was a job that was only available to the strong. These were Jewish prisoners selected to work in the crematoria at Auschwitz. They were selected for their strength and fitness. They worked in terrible conditions, processing and disposing of the bodies of those sent to the gas chambers. So this was when we talked about the gas chambers where they would have the shower heads that would release gas instead of water. Once all of those dead bodies were on the ground, it would be up to the Sonderkommando, who were Jewish prisoners, to remove the bodies of the dead Jewish people and take them to the crematoria. This was a high-ranking and prestigious job, but as you can see, it was also extremely insulting. And it was basically the Nazis and the SS not wanting to do the dirty work. They were doing awful things, but not taking responsibility for it. So they would give Jewish people these little coins that are in the picture, and that was like a ticket. They would get better food. They would get a place to sleep. They would get better barracks. And they had essentially a better life as long as they did their job. Many people who agreed to do this job, once again, were not happy about it. They did what they had to do to survive, but there were some people who did not agree to do this job because they may be disposing of bodies of people that they knew and loved, and they were not willing to do that. And if you refused, you would be put into a different job. The problem with the Sonderkommando is once they inevitably, because the conditions were so terrible, even with their privileges, when their health inevitably declined, they themselves were disposed of. They no longer were needed, and they themselves were put into a gas chamber and put into the crematoria. So this was not a happy ending for most people. Some of the other jobs were prisoners of the Canada Commando here. So Canada Commando their job was to sort through the belongings confiscated or taken from other prisoners at Auschwitz-Birkenau. This was in May of 1944. So again, as I believe it was Rita at the beginning at the first video talked about, as soon as she got to the camp, she was asked to fold and place her clothes on a bench. Remember where she put them to take her shoes with them. Anything that was left on those benches wasn't left there forever. Again, another group of Jewish or other prisoners would come, take those items, and sort through them. We see at the end of the Holocaust that they have piles and piles of eyeglasses or piles and piles of wallets, or in this case, you can see all the suitcases and the bedding. This was a very desired job because if you were good at it, if you were sneaky and stealthy, they absolutely did steal things back. So it wouldn't usually be the big bulky items like a fur coat or a blanket or anything along those lines. They would usually take things like jewelry and money. And the most highly prized would be photographs. So they might steal photographs from a wallet and return it to the person who lost it, if they recognized who it was. And this was another way that they were able to help their fellow prisoners find that will to live and to survive. If they had some sort of a connection to their past or the memory of something to look forward to, oftentimes that would be a will to live. It was very dangerous to steal things, and it was very dangerous to smuggle them out. And if they were caught, they were very severely punished. So it was a very risky job, but it was considered a good job. Other jobs that they had, they would be contracted out to other factories throughout Germany. So the prisoners would be taken daily into factories. This picture, for example, is prisoners building airplane parts at a Siemens factory in Brobeck, a subcamp of Auschwitz. So Siemens makes airplanes, and the prisoners would be there building airplane parts for the Nazi army that was fighting in World War II. So they were there helping as the workforce for the war effort in Germany. And it wasn't necessarily in the camps, but it would be nearby, and they would transport the prisoners to and from these factories. Again, if you're thinking people tried to escape, of course they did. And did some succeed? Of course they did. And if they got caught, they would be shot. So it was a risk some people were willing to take, and it was not a risk for some people. They thought there was no other option. But that would be more of a personal decision than anything else. Liberation. So liberation is when the prisoners were set free. The first major camp to be liberated was Majdanek, which was near Lublin in Poland in July of 1944. It was liberated by a Soviet army. So when the Soviets got there with their furry hats and the stars on their forehead, the prisoners did not know if this was a positive thing or a negative thing originally, but what usually happened is that the Germans would try to hide the evidence of mass murder by destroying much of the camp, but parts, including the gas chambers, were still left standing. So there have been records that show that they would shoot as many prisoners as they could, and whoever was left behind, they would just simply lock them in there, and the soldiers would flee and run away into the night, leaving everything else remaining. Sometimes they would set fire to everything so that they had no evidence. This shows us that the Germans, although they were going along with the Holocaust, knew that it was wrong. They knew that this was not okay, despite having orders saying it was okay. There's a lot of evidence that shows us they do know how wrong this was. Gradually, the camps were liberated until the final camp, Stutthof, was liberated on May 9th of 1945. So it took a little over a year for them, actually a little under a year, to liberate all of the known camps. There are a lot of theories that there were camps that we did not discover, or camps that were destroyed entirely before the advancing armies came. So there is potential for more, but we just simply do not have the evidence to prove it. So these are some photos of Liberation Day. You can see the Arbeit macht frei, which is the sign over the entrance to Auschwitz. You can see the prisoners leaving, some of them having to carry each other. They all have smiles on their faces. They're happy to be leaving. Here we have the Soviet army coming into a camp, being liberated, and you can see, again, the smiles everywhere as much as you can. All the prisoners just trying to thank the soldiers for the liberation. But these were times that were tough for the soldiers liberating, because many of them did not know this was even happening. So to stumble upon a concentration camp for the first time, they had no idea what was even happening. And they didn't know if it was a prison. Should they release the soldiers? They're all sick. Should we release them? Is it a good idea? So the process of liberation was, again, very nerve-wracking, and also there was oftentimes a ton of language barrier. Remember, the prisoners were coming from all around Europe, so there was not always a common language. So sometimes things would get lost in translation. Here we see, I believe this is an American soldier at Dachau. Dachau, which was that 12-year concentration camp, was liberated by the Americans, and you can see the soldiers handing things to the prisoners. They would rarely simply release the prisoners because, again, diseases, they would have to delouse, meaning spray them and clean them to get lice off of them or to get the sicknesses taken care of before they re-entered the population. I'm sure at times like we have right now, we can understand why isolating a disease can be very beneficial. So this is our final video of the day. This is a Holocaust survivor talking about the day that he was liberated. So he was a young boy on Liberation Day. It is a BuzzFeed video, so I apologize for the ads at the end, but it is a very well told story, and the graphics are great. And apparently I'm going to try and sell you some stuff too, because why not?
I had nightmares, of course, for I would say for a couple of months. You know, waking up thinking that I'm still in the camps, and I was so happy that I was in a real bed. In order to have a little bit of pleasure, let's say, which is there's not too much of it in the camps, I made friends with two Polish kids. We didn't get too much sleep, and we used to just get out real early in the morning, because in the barracks it was just crying and screaming and praying, and it wasn't unusual that a prisoner who was laying next to you to go to sleep, when you woke up they were dead. In any of these camps, everything is so the same day in and day out, that when anything unique happens that is not on the schedule, you always immediately try to talk about it. Is this good news or bad news? One morning we came out, and the first thing we saw was that there are no guards in the guard towers. So we are sneaking between the barracks towards the gate, and lo and behold, nobody's there. So we get enough courage to go to the gate, and we notice there's a heavy chain with a padlock on it, and it's a very, very foggy morning, and we are just dumbfounded. All of a sudden there's a break in the fog, like a mirage, and all you see is two horses with a horseman. As he's coming closer, one of the Polish kids says to me, "Look at his hat," and it was a red star, a Russian soldier. He comes to the gate, and he says, "I'm advance guard. Nobody can leave the camp because there are all sorts of diseases. You're full of lice, and you haven't been washing for months." But he says, as he takes out his gun, shoots off the padlock, doctors will be coming, medication will be coming, food will be coming very shortly. So the three of us, as fast as our skinny legs can carry us, we go to every barrack in the vicinity, open up the door in every language that we know, just yelling, "We are free, we are free." And you'll never forget that moment, the sounds from the barracks. Those who are able to walk out to the sunlight, walk out. Those who can't walk are crawling out. I have to pass through a little area where there are little bungalows. And this is where the SS families were staying. And they must have left in a big hurry, because I go into one of the bungalows and I open up the closet, the clothing in there. Open up the pantry, food. And then I go into the bathroom and I turn on the water, hot water, fluffy towels, shampoo, soap I haven't seen for a year. I make a little victory dance on my prison uniform. Get in there and take my first hot shower in a year. It's wonderful. I'm trying to have as many happy moments as possible. At my age, you can't take any chances.
Well, I don't know about you guys, but I always tear up a little bit when he describes that. So why do we learn and remember something so horrifying? Why do we go back and talk about this, even though it's probably the last thing most people want to talk about? Well, the first reason is knowledge is power. You have to know things. If you don't know things, you can't do anything about it. Number two, when we know things, we can see the warning signs as well. So we can start to see when things are going bad. When we start to have a leader coming in, making laws, and then starting to identify people and starting to move those people. So those are the types of warning signs that we can see that something is wrong and that it's not going a direction we want it to. It's not a guarantee that something's happening, but we do need to keep our eyes open. And then the third thing we have to remember is that we are responsible for making sure this never happens again. That nobody else in history has to go through something like this anywhere in the world. So we do need to know what happened. We do need to know why this is happening so that we can make sure it never happens again. So it is time to submit your notes. Remember to click on the blue button that says Submit Assignment in the top right corner. Click on the Google Drive tab, Google Drive, attach the notes that you have downloaded, and confirm until you see Submitted in the top right corner. Tomorrow we are going to be learning about the end of the war, which coincides with the end of the Holocaust, and we're going to see how this all wraps up and moves into the future. So, have a great day. Thank you for submitting your notes, and we'll see you here tomorrow.